I'd like to talk a little bit about your adventures with Mr. Sully, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because there may be some people that may listen to this or get this, right? And just knowing that they're not alone.
Yeah, thank you. So January of 2021, January 5th, 2021, my wife went into labor early that morning and denied it until about 8 o'clock that night. And we thought, it'd been a very normal pregnancy. She'd actually tested low risk on the genetics testing for Down syndrome.
Okay.
There were never any significant anatomy scans that were misproportioned. All the signs for Down syndrome were not there.
Yeah.
She actually tested positive for COVID during delivery without any signs or symptoms. Shared with you this morning that it was inactive labor, and the nurse popped her head in and said COVID positive, and the doctor looked up and went to checked with everybody, are you okay to continue? And maybe a minute later Sully was born.
Oh wow.
So we're in isolation with our newborn, in a different room than the post-op rooms, or I guess postpartum rooms are nice.
Yeah. It's almost like a little hotel room.
Yeah. We weren't in like the suite or anything, but with our daughter Brighton, we had a nice room.
Yeah.
This one was tiny. And we couldn't leave, couldn't go down to the food court. I was bummed I couldn't get one of those good sandwiches down the way.
Right.
But the pediatrician comes in that afternoon and said, did you all have any genetics testing? And I literally said, oh yeah, we did the one for Down syndrome. He was clear. And she said, actually, he has many of the markers for a child with Down syndrome. And she started pointing at all these things. And of course, we think he looks just like his sister. They're like twins. We don't see any of it at the time.
Yeah.
So to confirm that, they do a blood draw. And they knew something was up. Hindsight with this, they had the NICU team come do the blood draw, and they told us something like, oh, they're better at blood draws on babies. Okay. Well, they had their cart right there in the little hallway, the isolation hallway, and they started the blood draw, and he turned blue and just immediately went blue. And they took the oxygen mask off the wall, put it on his face, and he turned red. And they said, we have to go to the NICU now. Oh, wow. And tell that to a mother that just had a baby 12 hours prior.
I couldn't imagine.
And, I'm seeing both sides, but they're still taking my son. But my wife's like
devastated.
Can't even put it into words.
Right.
Emotional wreck. And we were still at the hospital at the time, and they allowed the nurses to take pictures with our phone, and that's what we had until about 11:30 that night. We got a call from a doctor saying, though we haven't confirmed it, our medical team believes your son does have Down syndrome. He also has a heart defect, or a set of heart defects called tetralogy of Fallot. So we're freaking out, and he said, oh, by the way, that's the same heart defect Shaun White had. So he's going to be okay. Okay. I mean, that's pretty good cardio capacity for Shaun White.
Right.
So calmed us a little bit, but he was transported by ambulance across the street to Cook that night. And we're still in COVID jail.
Yeah.
So we were let out the next day. My wife's OB came in and said, you've been through enough, go home with your family.
Yeah.
And we had to wait 9 more days to see our son.
Oh, wow.
So he actually was in quarantine at Cook outside the NICU area because he had to have 2 negative tests before he could be in the general population. So fortunately, we knew some nurses there, and a very close friend of the family would stop by our house, and we'd leave blankets that smelled like us on the doorstep, and she would go hold Sully for those 9 days.
Wow.
So he ended up in there for 21 days. And really, he didn't come home on any oxygen, didn't have any, he didn't have feeding tube, just a normal baby.
Yeah.
He was in the NICU for so long because he was struggling to learn how to take a bottle. So it was mentioned he may need a GI tube, and it was like he heard that and said, nope.
Nope.
And I remember giving him his first successful bottle and just being in tears. And the nurse, we had this very seasoned nurse for that department, and she just really focused on us, getting him to feed without that extra support. So came home, opens up a whole bunch of doctor's visits, right? They poke and prod these kids because Down syndrome will open the door to other possibilities of things being different.
Okay.
So about half of the population with Down syndrome has some sort of heart defect, and about half of those need some sort of surgical intervention.
Oh, wow.
So Sully ended up having open heart surgery at 6 months.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, he's a tough little kid.
Yeah, no kidding. And he's 3, you said?
Yep.
Yeah, 3 now?
3.5.
3.5. Yeah, definitely.
It's super important.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a pretty normal 3.5-year-old boy now.
Yeah.
Wild, I'll say feral. He likes to throw things on the ground and hear them break.
Oh, okay.
He ripped some shelves off the wall the other day. That was cool.
Yeah.
But he does things that his peers, his typically developing peers, aren't doing yet. He puts socks and shoes on properly.
Oh, wow.
If we forget to brush his teeth, he'll bring us a toothbrush and toothpaste and want us to brush his teeth.
Dang.
He has one medicine left, and
Okay.
we open the drawer of where the syringes are, and it's oral, but we use a syringe, and he'll come running for it.
Okay.
So he's a smart kid.
Yeah. That's cool. For those that maybe do have a child or handle a child or know a child or whatever with Down syndrome, right? What would you tell them?
Yeah. So some of the best advice I got when he was brand new was that there's not a timeline. So you can't put a baby on the same timeline you would, or a baby with Down syndrome on the same timelines. Walking comes at a different time. Teeth came in a weird order.
Okay.
So he got a baby tooth, and weird to the point that his dentist x-rayed to see if there were more teeth in there. And then the next set were rear molars.
Okay.
So imagine that, you're supposed, it grows with them as they grow. So they're kind of used to it by the time the molars kick in.
Right.
And it went from one tooth to molars.
Oh, wow.
Walking took him a long time to trust pulling up. And then we have video of it. One day he just decided, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk.
Okay.
So don't trust a timeline, or don't compare your kid to a timeline.
Yeah.
We remind ourselves of that all the time. Like, just because so-and-so is 3 months older doesn't mean that we should be doing this yet.
Yeah. I definitely think you probably do see this, that a lot of society, for the most part, they want you to fit in a box, and they want your kid to fit in a box.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously, he fits in a box. He fits in his box that's created for him.
Yeah.
Right. Not everybody else's. Right. But that's a good lesson really for any of us.
Isn't it?
Right. I mean, my oldest son, whenever he was, he was 15 or 14 months before he started walking.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and then going through elementary, a lot of the teachers are like, hey, we need to test him for autism. And, it's just because he was different.
Yep.
Nothing's wrong with him. Not that, having autism is wrong or anything, but just, for their minds, they're thinking, oh, something's wrong. It's like, no, nothing's wrong with him. He's just who he is.
Yeah.
This is how he was born, And I think we need to adapt to that versus having him adapt to us.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great if we could all just be complete individuals,
Right. Yeah.
and not have to fit into some box? I talked to you about private schools can tell him no, but
Yeah, that's crazy.
if you have the kids of name brand private school spend 13 years of their lives with a kid with Down syndrome right next to their side, how much better members of society are those kids?
Completely, right? And I all the time in our martial arts business, we get calls from parents and says, "Hey, do y'all take special needs kids?"
Yeah.
I'm like, sure.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Yeah. And I'll tell you, whenever that kid with Down syndrome, or we actually had one with multiple sclerosis, and he was in a walker.
Wow.
And he did that for a long time until he couldn't walk anymore. We bought him a wheelchair, and he still came. And the other kids lit up whenever he came in, right? They just light up.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see. So, yeah, I don't know.
Sully's in an adaptive dance class.
Okay.
And so I'll show you the shirt sometime, but there's 4 butterflies on the shirt, and he's one of the 4 because he's one of the original students.
Oh, cool.
And they made an exception for him. I think you're supposed to be 2 or maybe 3. And he was about 2. He wasn't walking yet.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the first year, he just sat there and let the instructors hold him, and he just loved it, right?
Yeah.
College age girls holding him all day.
I'll sign up. No, I'm just kidding.
So it's mostly kids with Down syndrome. There's a couple other chromosomal disorders in there, and a couple kids with autism in there that, the moms and dads get to interact with one another outside of a typical school setting, and the kids get to do their thing, and they have a recital, and
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he doesn't do anything during practice, but then he dances at home.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's
how I am whenever we go dancing. I'll just sit there.
Yeah.
But I'll dance at home all the time.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you for sharing, the Sully story. And I think it's important, right? Because, he's important. And I know there may be some listeners or whatever. And hey, listen, if you don't have someone with Down syndrome or any kind of special needs, but you know someone that does, and send them this podcast, right? Yeah. I think it'd be good. And
those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, reach out to me. Try to connect with me. We have a network of folks that are ahead of us in the journey, are just behind us in the journey. But, there's no need to try to do this alone. We've heard some horror stories of folks trying to do this alone. And there's a huge network of resources out there. And unfortunately, you're going to hit roadblocks with different providers along the way. And I'd just love to help navigate that any way possible.
I appreciate the friendship and the conversation. Hey, listen, if you're still watching, number one, you're probably my wife or maybe Pryce's wife.
Might just be me.
Or you're watching the rerun. But no, thank you for watching later in the podcast. Please share this out and comment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. It really does help the algorithm and helps the channel continue to grow. And we just want to reach as many people as we can and give some inspiration out there.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie. I appreciate this.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Glad you're on.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time on The Biz Life.